when we listen to all high-tech, hi-fi speakers using hi-fi words, after some time you feel like sleeping. But sincerely, sir, yours is one lecture, one speech. I never slept because you know how to manipulate and how to manipulate and how to bring in the jokes and where to pause and how to allow. You are one speaker who will give the audience the time to react, to laugh, and then you will start. Will continue. That's one of the biggest. And then you like in the music and all while singing, they'll sing a long line, then they'll take a gasp. I've never seen you take a gasp also among your speech. I think in Tamil we had an excellent actor by name Shivaji Ganeshan. You should have heard about it. He's called Chevalier Shivaji Ganeshan. I would like to call you Chevalier Yatin Pandya. Something yeah, I think like what I'm saying is true. The audience can hear it now later in the part of the speech. So we are very fortunate to be with you today, sir, because we have many colleges in Tamil Nadu, in rural areas, from where they cannot come and listen to your speech. So this technology provides a platform for all the students, for all the architects who are in the tier 2, tier 3 cities to listen to your speech today. Welcome, sir. And thanks a lot for accepting our invitation. And I should extremely thank our friend architect Durganand for talking to you, for connecting to you, and then making you accept for the speech. And I should also thank architect Murali for initiating this wonderful programs for the IIA Tamil Nadu chapter. Thank you once again. Welcome.
It should be over to Kosal Ram. Yes, to take over.
Vanakkam, namaskar. A very good evening to everybody. And we have architect Yatin Pandya here, and he is an author, academician, researcher, as well as a practicing architect with his firm Footprints Earth, which Earth stands for Environment, Architecture, Research, Technology, Housing. He is graduated from SIET University, Ahmedabad, and also has a Master of Architecture from McGill University, Montreal. He has involved in city planning, urban design, mass housing, architecture, interior design, product design, as well as conservation projects. He has won over 38 national and international awards. Some of the most recent ones are United Nations Habitat Award, which has a special mention, and also the United States Curry Stone Foundation Design Prize for Sustainable Practice. He has written over 300 articles in national and international journals. Several books authored by him has been published internationally, and he has been involved in preparing over 30 video documentations on architecture. He has been visiting faculty at National Institute of Design and CEPT University, and he has also thesis guide to nearly 300 graduate, masters, and PhD students. In fact, he has lectured in over 15 countries in over 100 forums. And environmental sustainability, social cultural appropriateness, timeless aesthetics, and economic affordability are key principles of his work. I invite architect Yatin Pandya to commence on his presentation and webinar today towards humane, sustainable, and timeless architecture. Welcome, sir.
Namaskar, Vanakkam, very good evening. I know Chennai has been a bit affected at the moment more than the rest of the country. So I wish you good luck that things easen out better. We had a good number, but we have kind of eased the lockdown. But I think it's very timely. Thanks for your kind words. And it's my honor to be sharing my thought. I don't call it a lecture, but I think it's a discussion and thought process which we can share. And especially at this juncture where even though, let me start sharing the PowerPoint and talk through that while we had been in lockdown, we didn't feel like a jail. Are you able to see my screen to begin with?
Yeah, you're good, sir, and you can go ahead. No issues.
Okay. So what has been happening is that this pandemic, in a way, has taught us many lessons, and so have been many natural, so-called, disasters or kind of issues. But what we learn out of it is something that I think we need to talk about and take it further. It's been a great equalizer in some ways, this pandemic. I mean, with all due respect to those who've been affected. But what it has done is that, one, it has come top down. Second, It has broken all the barriers of class, creed, economics, political ideologies, countries, geographic, GNPs, whatever that you have, GDPs. So it's been kind of telling us that all these are man-made. Otherwise, as human species, we've been all equal. And it has also taught us the fundamental lesson on humility, then frugality and sustainability. We learned the difference between excessive versus essential. We could live with very essential. We understood, we are the same number of people that is on this planet, but we always talk that, oh, we are too many, this planet cannot handle. But when we remove this undue excessive systems out of this planet, all nature has been kind of rejuvenating, and it's kind of correcting its own course. Air has cleaned out, the water has cleaned up, we're able to see far off. The kind of creatures which were always pushed beyond certain kind of limits have chosen and have found freedom to come out and invade or be part of our. So what is this taught us is that human being does not have to try and become master of nature. It is very much a part of nature, but it must coexist with nature. And this basic principle of any existence is about two fundamental equations and its equilibrium. One is human to human, which we call society, and second is human to nature, because we are an aspect of nature. And I think if our development models are based on these two fundamentals, I think there would be sustainability, there would be kind of long-term surety of our own existence within peace, as well as the kind of comfort that we look for. So point is that how do we turn this calamity, taking it as a pause, thinking about pondering on the things, the course of development that we have chosen, and if we can turn this constraint into a virtue, that this rejuvenated planet that has come to us, how do we deserve to kind of make it better and not at least make it deteriorate further than what it has corrected itself. And this is where we need to go back from where we kind of paused. We were going for these kinds of ideas of development and progress, etc., modernity. We could rethink now that was this smart? If this was the image as the idea of what we wanted to achieve as definition of smart, it creates a question, is it a vision or is it really a slogan? And if that is the idea of smart, we need to understand, have tradition been anti-modernity? Is this the face of new India? Has progress been misconstrued to be growth? And where cities really dumb all along, So we had this kind of paradoxes where we created home, which created community, and that created living environment. And recently staying in neighborhood, talking with family, and being part of the whole kind of living environment, we understood the value of that, as against the idea of number game, that it's a number of dwelling units, which creates a kind of crowd and as a product of a building industry. The kind of disparity and affordability and deficit, these are the kind of issues that we know are around us. Urban-rural divide, inequality, technological rift, the basic nutrition, etc., etc. Point is to just acknowledge that development model has to be kind of all-encompassing to be able to respond to these realities and acknowledge to find answers. So it is not being pessimist. It's not to kind of get overwhelmed by the problem, but should there not be a development model where there is a win-win situation for all? And for a second, we can remember Mahatma Gandhi ji, where a single solution of something like spinning wheel, and he could talk through that, gender equity, he could talk about poor empowerment, he could talk about self-reliance, he could talk about independence for the nation, he could talk about progress, growth, whatever, through one single kind of idiom. So can we find such a model where a kind of direction answers many questions that we have? So it is that the search, and this is where through design, how could we add value and bring some of such responses and be responsible as a designer, as a kind of a social professional. So to begin with, design, therefore, is not about finding one answer to one question. It's about asking many questions, finding many answers to each of these questions, and then picking one answer that answers most to all the questions. So in sense, it's about discretion. It's about adding value. It's like, you go to a doctor and, he knows many things, but doctor looks at the history, looks at the symptom, kind of examines you clinically, and then diagnoses. So he gives you a diagnose and prescribes what is right for you. So there's nothing like good or bad about design. It's always appropriate or inappropriate, and appropriate to the place, people, and program. And that's why architecture has to go, or any development has to go through these 5 mandatory filters. For example, timeless aesthetics, because building lasts beyond us. Socio-cultural appropriateness, because we always do it for others, and matching their lifestyle and aspirations is the norm. Then environment and resource management, because as architect, we are triply responsible. That first, we are the alterer. We change the existing landscape. So what we change hopefully needs to be for better. We can't worsen it. Architect or building industry consumes 42% of energy, higher than most other, and therefore we need to be aware, are we spending it for the right? And we are equally large consumer of resources as well as the pollutant, okay? And our building arguably lasts beyond our own life cycle, and therefore our mistakes also perpetuate, and that's where also we need to be a little more responsible. Economic affordability and structural stability. So these two we might talk, not for now, but the earlier 3 aspects. And if we look at, therefore, a holistic design response to create a built environment, a living environment like that, how have we been going about it? For example, this is one slide I show without the titles of where they are, but if I don't, put any bet on this, I'm sure we might be able to guess the climate base that it comes from, the kind of material resources that might be available, as well as the possible sort of culture that it might be part of. Yet for academic interest, we can put some labels there. But here I'm able to, or I'm happy to put any amount of bet that what is the kind of place that it comes from. And I'm sure I'm the winner. And if I put this name, you would very innocently accept that, yeah, this might be right. I might have just fooled you, juggled around, and it still doesn't matter. And why India? If you put any name out of the country and the places, it still works. And these are actually correct, from all over the world, A to Z. And that is how it is. So we need to pause and understand what is the kind of model are we looking for. And this is not about turning the clock backward. It's just first objectively analyzing. Both of these are Kerala, which is the appropriate Kerala for us, which is the Jaipur we are looking forward to, which is the kind of Kolkata we need to have. So it is under these kind of questions, if we start understanding for the appropriateness to the place, people, and all, what really India is about, what is its ethos. And this is where, particular to India, I would like to begin by clarifying this otherwise synonymously used terms, that is history as well as tradition. To me, they are different and perhaps opposite. To me, history is a dead tradition, while tradition is a living history. When something, both of them come from the past, but something that becomes obsolete for the change, time, and circumstance, it dies its own death, and that is history. And that is like once a tradition that was alive but no more relevant, and that dies its own death. Quite often that is technology. As against something that may have come from past, have been transferred to generations, but the very fact that it survives today, its survival is a proof of those values being shared and appreciated or acknowledged even in a changed time, and therefore it's a living history. Many of our festivals, many of our subconscious, what we do in the daily routine, have come from yesterday, but they have sustained today for the fact that they are yet appropriate part of us today. So when I talk about tradition, it's not turning the history, but it's a continuum over the time, which in fact has proven that it is still very much a part of us. And you can say it is a kind of a continued truth for us as far as that kind of continues to exist. And as a result, in India, we see this overlay of time. We see moorings of the past laying over the aspirations of tomorrow, and together they create the realities of today. For example, this is, as you can guess, penny pincher Ahmedabad. Here it says Australia calling. It is advertisement to make new generation aspire to become a world citizen by studying in Australia. But the most antique or most traditional way to economically communicate and yet effectively communicate that message is maybe 500 rupee for 8-hour shift of a camel cart. And it is more effective than perhaps crore rupee slot on a IPL in between break. So if we understand what really India is, then we won't judge the book by the cover, but we would understand the true DNA, the ethos of it. For example, the idea of resilience and endurance. So how do we turn constraint into a challenge and challenge into an opportunity, and we invent out of it? The idea of individual versus collective, where caring and sharing is an important facet of the survival or the existence. Existence through notions, and quite often notions over kind of ride the reality or the sort of, physical thing. For example, if it's a boring lecture, even in an AC hall, it's very stressful, versus even outside in a cricket match, if it's exciting, then we don't care about the thermal comfort. And one important example, very effective, is that we have this habit and social service self-assumed to paint public corridor red with pan spit, but no warning sign and no kind of 500 rupee fine kind of thing has stopped it. But if you plant the icons of gods and goddesses, it still works very effectively, because moment that is seen, it is no longer a dead wall, it becomes a shrine in our mind. So if design wise, if you're able to understand, therefore, these deeper aspects of the place and people, we would be able to find solutions which would be effective and yet kind of work for the same condition and the context that we've been asked for. Plurality has been one of the important dimensions, which even as an architect, we're most challenged with. How do we create a singular resolution which answers diverse people, and not only for now, but even for time to come? So that's where the timelessness has been a challenge. And what has been the genesis of this idea that we can learn from? To me, the idea lies not in agreeing to one statement or one truth. We have found a beautiful answer called multiple truth. As many people, as many conceptions of God. And it is more important where you reach rather than who takes you there. Same way we can find that same 6-yard sari, but it looks different on different bodies and can be worn differently, and so on and so forth. So whether it's a faith and belief system, whether it's attire, or my favorite, the Sadhya meal, the idea of thali, and they are perfect personifications of this notion of plurality, where like, let's take again favorite dish, pizza. Once you choose all your toppings and cheese type and whatnot, once cooked, first bite tastes the same as the last and tastes the same as the in between, and every bite is the same taste. You eat the same pizza as I do, we can compare the experience of food alike. Contrary to that, any thali, idea of combination meal, ingredients can be any. We can have Italian thali for that matter. But cooks, which actually is a raw material, although it's cooked, sabji, dal, whatever, but you, first pluralism is you are the designer of your bite. So each bite is a unique experience, is a unique combination. First bite need not taste as the next, need not taste as the last. And you eat the same thali as I do, we cannot compare the experience because my sequence may be different, my proportion may be different, and my combination may be different. So that's a kind of thali we need to invent in architecture. And as much conditioned it might look, we all know that if I say this is Southern thali, I would be insulting, because one region to another, one city to another, even in South, might have a hugely variation. So structure is the same, concept is the same, DNA is the same, but yet the combination and the ingredients can be varied. So it does not preclude variety. This is what we even see, that our city have been vital, it's been peculiar with the kind of things that it denoted to that particular place and people, versus same McDonald, everything everywhere. So with that as the kind of basic construct of time, space, and existence in which we operate, how do we create architecture that is timeless? How do we create architecture that is socioculturally responsive? And how do we create architecture that is environmentally sustainable? So timelessness, I'll take one example which has been my favorite. Why favorite is not it's from here, but it's basically a utilitarian device, a 600-year-old structure, which is simply a well as a device to fetch water, but architecturally it's been exalted to become a very unique and very exciting experience that 6 centuries later, even though everything is underground, so it's not even the scale that is jutting out like a pyramid that awes you down, and yet with no functional relevance anymore, everybody descends 5 to 6 story to just simply experience that journey through that. And that's why it's a great example of experientially engaging architecture, even though functionally obsolete, even though kind of no kind of a glorified decor, neither it is a king, nor technically it's a shrine so that you revere it with some another sort of a notion. It's a simple engineering to descend to the first aquifer, which runs at about 50 to 60 feet depth. And you have series of steps, and so that earth that you have dug doesn't cave in. It's a shoring strutting, it's a tributed construction of beam and column. Everything below ground, the first signal. So what is the narrative? Spatial narrative here comes from the elemental assembly. So look at this. In order to go down, you have steps to climb up. But two outcrop of stone and step denote a signal that this is the entry point. Please come here. So it's an invitation to come. Here, you don't see further as this eye level picture shows. The moment you take one step, the void further is revealed. So the nuance that you did not know before comes to the fore. And as a result, there is a curiosity built. As a result, there is a kind of a engagement that you are anticipating what might come further. And that's with that reward of having seen something new, you're going further. Now here you can see there is the whole placement of built and unbuilt. So that void being open and the sun beaming from there, it becomes your first arrival destination, guided by the visual clue, and you come here. Now here you are surrounded from three sides. So you turn to the fourth, and this is where you get magnificent panoramic view, as if the monument was giving you a welcome hug, welcome to my precinct. Here you can see how long this structure is, but you are not a crow to be able to fly all the way till the end. So it's all the time giving a clue and still concealing something. So it's a game of revealing and concealing, not a boring one of simply concealing and puzzling and you become stressful. So it kind of also denotes a further clue. Like I will say, it's like a treasure hunt. You go to one destination and it ignites you to go further. And then because you have to take element called staircase, every platform, couple of things changes. It's a default in the staircase that you are transposed horizontally as well as vertically. So even though the composition is the same, your way of perceiving, your point of view keeps changing, and as a result it looks different. And like a thali, if you are on center or in the side, if you are on this platform or that platform, people going through the same route, but their experiences would be different. And every time, if the sun is in a different position, it will be still different, So like in the earlier upper platform, it feels with a less enclosure, almost like a terrace with a parapet. Then you go further down, it feels like a room with little diffused light and bit more enclosure. You go further down, it starts feeling like a well. And as I say that if you don't walk in the center, it's asymmetric. And only at the end, water is revealed. So water was merely an excuse. So it's like, it's not the destination, it's just a kind of an excuse. So the whole essence is in the journey, and journey that you personally decode and therefore be part of it. So the good architecture is where your being there matters. You might have seen 100 pictures, but being there gives you more rewarding kind of a thing, even you know that, okay, maybe there's water that I'm going to confront. But having taken that journey, if Mr. Trump comes here and commandos drop him down into this water, he better not come, we'll send him the water. But he has to go traverse this path himself and experience that. And then, of course, the way reflection, light, and the kind of things change. And even the semantics. So now this is the added overlay. First is the spatial and then the overlay of the symbolism, which needs cultural familiarity, that when you first enter, it's a last kind of a plane, but first in the visual line that tells you that it is Ganesh, which means it marks the auspicious beginning. And the fact that there are two associations, you going to the womb of Mother Earth, as well as you kind of going to the water world, the associations with these have been conjured. Like here, the fish, the same shaft that starts with Ganesh ends with that of a fish motif. So it tells you, without even dipping your feet, it reminds you that you come to the water world, the Patala. So that's why it's a kind of example of a complete architecture where nuances unfold as you go, and yet it is just a simple functional utilitarian object, but has been exalted to become a social place. Women go there, chat in the morning, and bitch around about their husbands or mothers-in-law, relieve their stresses. It's a social ground for the travelers, and as well as it's almost become a shrine. So that's what architecture can emote and engage you with mentally as well as physically. Just a similar theory of kinesthetic perception as personified, so that it doesn't seem that these are only good for some building in past. Le Corbusier's theory of promenade architectural also personified the same concept, that how do you walk, and your dynamic perception keeps you engaged with the place differently. So from distance, what is a neutral facade, that hypnotizing ramp, I call it a frog's tongue, that kind of swallows you in, then it's a ramp. So unlike stepwell, you're not conscious of ascent. You just walk and you end up. So the first floor looks like a ground looks like a basement, feels like a basement. And here that, this becomes veranda and a gateway to enter. Then there is a baffle, you've known it. So I'll just kind of quickly run through that. So by each of these, and then that staircase, after you take the turn on the first floor, now the staircase reveals to you. Till that it was hidden. If you see this front elevation, stair is hidden. When you go in, now after that journey of loop on the first floor, it comes to the fore and it now stops at the second. And from there diagonally, you take another stair and go further. Even this toilet, when you are on the same floor, that's a wraparound plane and it's taller than you and it feels like a barrier. But when you see it from the staircase landing, it feels like a sculpture in the overall. So same element, but your change position makes it look different. So the point is that this is how it takes you into the journey, and each place has a different feel, experience. Then you turn the staircase, have you come like a gateway. This is where you see the next clue of how you climb. As I said, the wraparound plane, and it doesn't even show the third dimension per se. But from this landing, you see the same 2D now becomes 3D. It's just like a sculpture in a large void. Then another kind of a staircase. Often we just make circular, dog-legged staircase. There's nothing like staircase. It's just a platform to climb and one level to other. And the nature included, building is always static. Nature is constantly changing, and east-west responses, etc., etc. So this building is currently 68-year-old, and yet it kind of engages us to the fullest. So that's the kind of quality of timelessness. And if you take simply the quick look at the principles that might derive that, this has come from my book Concepts, where first dictum of experientially engaging architecture over time is disparate visual and physical access. You know where you're to go, so sightline is not blocked, but yet your physical place is to meander, like very effectively personified in southern Indian temples. And therefore, it's a story of junctures, nodes. Like they say, layers of onion or cabbage, if you peel off all, nothing remains. So this is how each node kind of excites you to anticipate something else or to be curious, and then the new one is your discovery. So even in Rajput palaces, you have a screen with the light difference. It tells you there's something further, but you can't walk straight. Although the plan may be symmetrical, in journey, you are kind of circumventing around. This Modera steps, they're again not straight. You have to take 3 steps, then move. Even in temple sequences, it's kind of obstructions in between that deviate the course. And even Islamic architecture, we've been always told it's symmetrical, it's axial. But with this water body and such landscape feature, it is not expecting you to swim and then move further. So it deviates you, and therefore you see the building from multiple point of view. So movement is the key, and that transition also of mind because you move through that, the way signals kind of engage and absorb you, you also mentally come into a different plane for which whatever that, brief may be about. You have, like thali, multiple choices. So it is not also dictatorial path. You eventually would land where, but you could take your journey from different ways. So the whole organization is not planar. It's also misgiving, actually, planar. Like I said, symmetry versus dynamically changing. So kinesthetics, perception while in movement. And this is exactly how, we draw a plan, but nobody sees any building like that. It's always at eye level and while in movement. And therefore, this kinesthetics, when it becomes the organizational principle, that is what I think if we learn, then architecture would be that much richer for onlooker and perceiver. And another is that building is static. Nature, if we integrate nature in terms of light and view, view, air, vegetation, landform, and people. If these six are the nature that comes along with the architecture, then the whole dynamics is constantly changing. It's inherent in nature. That's why I said that within the house, we did not, what was the difference between jail and the house? The very fact that you could look out, very fact you could talk to somebody, very fact that outside day and night, rain and not rain, things changed. We kind of, did not have to feel punished kind of by 2 months of stay within the house. And finally, the notion that the meaning changes, like I said, that pan spit on the wall, but versus the signal, like a swastik may be auspicious for Hindu, but maybe a sign of hatred for a Jew and in the Hitler regime. Now, if that is the idea of a holistic architecture, how have we been designing? To me, it looks like it's a too quick, singular, and a literal idea. One question, one answer. If child is dirtying the attire by crawling around the floor, turn the attire into a mop, let him go around, and this will be very useful in a lockdown time. That let the child crawl around, give him a mop, and you would have no worry to, and your wife would be very happy, or spouse would be very happy. Like, to protect one at a time. For example, your shoe is more expensive, so have an umbrella, not for you, but rather for a shoe, and like here, control alt delete through a single stroke with the gadget, or eat noodle hot, but you're getting late, so you must have fan to go with. And as architect, we are not behind, for symmetry's sake, for composition's sake, or God knows what, chief architect's sake, we end up into such innovations. We make amazing innovations, and then we do PhD how to solve them further. So then we make double PhD out of what way to resolve these issues. Point is that how, as designer, we add value. So design is not just problem solving, but it must add value. For example, here the function is obvious and it should function, but either adding value through humor, through aesthetics, through social message, through economics, through affordability, etc. So for example, even very personal, something as tattoo, do we need to write KR not knowing whether that fiance would last for that long? Or we are an architect, even a scale can be handy. We have this Navratri festival, and ladies come with a backless cholis, and we machos ogle on that. So better have the tattoo as a kind of an eye check chart. So at least the person knows that he doesn't need to look further down. He can't even look at fourth line that properly. And in the process, he would have missed the metro. So he may rather go to the next stop. Point is that function is the same, but how do you add value? Keyboard is a keyboard, but somebody designs it. In addition to it functioning well as a keyboard, can you not think of a three-dimensional placement of it? Can you not think of a flexible contour of that form? Can you think of waterproof? Can you think as cheapest? Can you be flexible with arranging of keys? So and so forth. So that's how do we bring in that additional dimension? Like here is like any other switch, a switch. But switch smiles, the ghost smiles when you put it on. If you put it for longer, it frowns. And if you are too long, it really makes faces, encouraging you to look at it and maybe inspire you to shut it out. But in Gujarat, we are not that sensitive. We only understand the penny. So for Gujarat, they have always a special range, like one in the middle top, that every time we have to put on light, there is a slot, you put a coin and the light comes on. So after that in lockdown, we became very romantic that, oh, there is a moon or new moon, let's sit out and let's not have the lights on. But it still serves the purpose. Like the bottom one, there is a switch with itself is a spring hook. So you come, you put a hat and the light comes on. And when you leave, it will automatically come off. You don't need a peon or somebody behind you. Point is that we have believed in reincarnation, but all these fragile products that we develop today, it's like use and throw. Can we not think of its secondary use, that it would not only be a wasted resource, but it would come in handy for something more? And that's where I think the direction we need to take it to. We had it long back, 67 or so. There was this beer bottle of the Heineken, which instead of round form developed squarish form with serration. So it became a brick on the wall. When you go high on spirits, it can still be used as a kind of walling option. Technology is a tool and not a kind of exclusive, recluse of the few. So it is simply a tool, and use it that way, that in a desert to keep the medicine refrigerated, you need a kind of solar panel, then might as well. It's not a paradox, but it would be a functional thing. So in other words, sustainability is simply a kind of adjustment, circumstantial adjustments. And it is not about equipment, it's not about technology, it's just about performing with the least and not compromising on the kind of comfort, effort, etc. And our parallel systems, informal systems do that daily in and out. And that's why we need to re-look at our norms and standard. And COVID has very well taught us that, as I said, that with very little that we could leave, we understood that we can do without these. And if we were able to use the spaces multiply over the time and so on and so forth, I think we would be better off as a kind of globe further on. The norms need to be performance based rather than prescriptive, otherwise you end up into such contradictions. If we unduly or unknowing, kind of without any right understanding, pick up from somewhere, we end up into such disasters. So we must know when we are aping and when we are adapting. Unthoughtfully picked up from single source is aping, and smartly picking from 100 source is PhD. Sociocultural appropriateness, we are always doing for others, and this is, after timeless aesthetics, another criteria we must look for. There was a study done in Japan that if the formal dressing of the executives, their ties and tuxedo, was relieved and they were able to wear informal dresses, they would not get stressed like this, fatigued like this, and actually even physical comfort, their air conditioning temperature could be couple of degrees warmer for the same level of comfort. So undue dressing was the culprit to having to jack up AC and spend more energy and feel fatigued. So if Mr. Mohanlal or people from southern, where there's a humid climate, if they are wearing the single loincloth or the mund, are they primitive, or they are the most appropriately dressed individuals for that particular place? And Gandhi also showed us that he could, wrap and unwrap and still kind of protect his modesty. So do we need Shashwat, the eternal Gandhi, who could wrap and unwrap? Or we need Gandhi also to toe a line of what is cool and what is hot, by seasons, by fashion, which unduly keeps changing, So that is where, how through design, and inadvertently sometimes we make a mistake, or we simply don't consult the context, we might end up into a problem. For example, this is a small lane, and it's been a traditional quarter, and century-old lane, as you can see, is showing positive vibes here. It has been probably readied for some festival. Similar small lane, and actually in a new development by a bylaw of having to provide a kind of service lane for not having some very dingy environment or a very ugly environment with dump of sewage, etc. So a good intention, but look at this, that there is a window next to that, arguably of a kitchen. So people find it most convenient because it's a passive kind of an edge to throw all their muck out. And therefore, what was a good intended device has actually become the reason for this to be degraded. Instead of window at no additional cost, if it turned into a door, people would not think this as a dump yard, and they would on their own develop that as a very positive back neighborhood space, So this is what design can do if we understand the context, culture, people, way of life, etc. appropriately. Like here in Ahmedabad, which is now UNESCO status, it's for way of life. It's not just architecture. So you can see it's a blurred interface. House comes out and street encroaches in, as against 15% by bylaw set aside, but not even a window looking on it. You can see that it is relegated into a no man's land and eventually encroached and abused land. Wrong in scale and location, too large a space in this new settlement, like a rubber stamped block, has failed, as against our traditional core. It was like a Chinese puzzle where built and unbuilt were internally twined. And it is not the money, it is the mindset. For example, this is in a slum where they could have put few houses. They have kept open space. At the junction of movement, just a plinth for dignity and a shade has been enough to give us a kind of a good community space at no cost. As again, this is Ballard Estate in Mumbai, and forbiddingly expensive real estate even today, and beautiful colonial buildings occupied, not left out, by the who is who of the industrial world, the corporate houses, their corporate offices. This is what it looks like, bottom one, right from the street side. But at the back, look at this, the pipe over the window shows their attitude that they have nothing to do with the other side. And as a result, this has been relegated to a dump yard and junkies place. What's a posh address for 9 to 6 is not a place to be between 6 and 9. Okay. So same with the building typology, like we had this, Tamil Agraharam, or we know the Pore, it had actually 2.7 FSI where they were vertically sliced, so to say. So if you take a cake, you vertically slice, it's the same kg and same volume, but the same truffle cake you cut horizontally, somebody gets crust, somebody cherry, and somebody the middle, okay? So it is not the difference of FSI, it's how you place it. Same way, this is simply to jump the gun and say the open space on the left is exactly the same amount in quantity as the ring in the right. But the ring in the, the one patch in the void in the middle, like on the right, allows the kitty parties, allows the kids play area, allows the parking, allows the trees, while this ribbon of 10 feet margin, same amount of 50% of land is good for nothing. So if we understand what we provide would be meaningful. Only in 4 to 5 story, we can still get 2.4, 2.5 FSI. Ahmedabad poor houses have 2.7 FSI, which is 1.5 times more than the legally allowed 1.8 FSI in an 11-story building. And this is just the simulation to show. So what I mean is that this is where we as architects make a difference to change the way people can live and the constraints of vertically divided and therefore indifferent housing, where nobody knows each other and they might rather think of an enemy the upper floor because his toilet leaks on you. And these examples have shown way back in 67, in a cold climate when this was done, this is more an answer for us in a warm climate where we can come out. So even if it's high rise, how do we kind of come out and be part of the outdoors, which we again miss a lot or learn a lot from the present pandemic. Environmental sustainability, there are all these R's. Refuse to begin with. If you don't need, don't take it. Reduce, recycle, restore, reuse, reform, reinterpret, regenerate, and so on and so forth. So first, reduce consumption. What you see top left is 40-acre land, 16-hectare land, where entire city of Dubrovnik, any medieval town, self-sufficient with protection, used to be part of that habitat. Several thousand families still living. It's a World Heritage Site. And it's not in isolation, just example in case. It's a beautiful one. So it's not even a slum. While the same area, look at the attitudinal difference, 40-acre in a cloverleaf intersection where simply a luxury of not slowing down vehicle from 100 kilometers an hour to change direction. This is in scale superimposed to prove that point. Where we learned that how do we multiply use the space. This is urban plaza in Ahmedabad in 21st century, the 6th mega city. This is cow grazing ground in the middle. It's not a grass area. It is how the cow herd brings. You buy from him the grass, so he's cash rich. You feed his own cows, so the cows are happy. So win-win for all. And you think you've done something benevolent, so you can start sinning from tomorrow. This is how the same space, the cows are replaced with cars and becomes a business district from about 10:30, 11 to about 7:30, 8 in the evening. And post 8 o'clock, now there are two-legged animals and it's become an outdoor eatery with, under the canopy of stars. So active diurnal metamorphosis of an open space. So you don't need 5 times the open space, same space daily transforms into 5 different spaces. This is what Corbusier was saying, that we often ignore, even in Mumbai, where we crib about no spaces being available, but I have yet to see great examples of terraces being used as a social space. This is Unity Habitatio and how he has done it. Even terrace as a reproductive resource. Left-hand side is a sequence of the kind of production or the growing on the terraces. Right-hand side is a facade, green facade, way back 67 years ago. This is also how several cultures and places have been using the terraces to them. So sustainability principles that we evolved over time when there was no electricity and still without fan even people were able to live reasonably comfortably. At the most, we would have welcomed the fan. So this first solution was thick mass. I often get a question, what in today's time, how can you afford thick mass? But we can fold it. For example, we get architectural projection of 2 feet to put this Alucobond panels or God knows what. Could you not instead have a very thin folded modulated facade where on the external side that 2 feet buffer could have been a storage, a wardrobe of a bedroom, and it would have insulated, it would have given you in and out of the mass that you would have liked, and it would, but legally you can't do that. So that's a kind of difference in mindset. So this was insulation, but insulation and ventilation has to go hand in hand. And this multi-tiered roof and the convective principle ventilation we learned from these places. Then terrace as a living space, which as I showed you earlier, that Rajput architecture did it very well, Mughal architecture did it very well. In Ahmedabad, we use it a lot. Fenestration, we have sun, even we are in contradiction. Southwest is good for breeze, but bad for sun. So Jali, without shutting down the view, it continued on air as well as gave you the view and ventilation, So and inside out, you could see everything, but outside it, you saw nothing. Mr. Laurie Baker reintroduced that in a very kind of beautiful way in a contemporary works. Venturi principle, the breeze picks up velocity and kind of reaches far, where and you don't get the glare of the sun and you still get draft with positive pressure going further, which can be ventilated out through courtyard. Then 3-part window, you go to Bangalore and 24-degree outside and still the hotel you need air conditioning because it is sealed glazing. If you're able to window, that outside 24 would have made inside at least 25 or something. So here, the ventilator, you have control like a bite of thali. You can permute and combine. The top ventilator can be good for exhausting the air in the summer afternoon. Middle one, you can walk through, look through, and the lower one where you can kind of, have the cool breeze come in. So light, view, and ventilation, 3 functions can be permuted and combined like a thali for different seasons, different needs, and different activity happening inside. We don't need dark. I don't say that you don't use electricity. I'm nobody to preach that. But in a daytime, who gave us a license to have corridor of a hotel with both sides or 3 sides blocked? So it's a dark alley, and without artificial light, you can't even see or breathe. So in India, we have plenty of daylight. We need to diffuse it rather than invent it. So skylight and all these fixtures, and use of terrace festival. This is just one example of Ahmedabad Port, where, as I said, 2.7 FSI, 67% ground coverage, only 4 to 5 story, no elevator, and the principle of upper floor projecting out. So you get more floor print above. When sun is overhead, entire facade is in the shade, and when next sun goes low, next building starts sheltering. So without air conditioning, even in Ahmedabad summer, you could stay there. And courtyard as a feature. My hopefully book, after I was able to complete it in this pandemic, and it's on courtyard houses of India, and south to north, east to south, pan India. That has been the DNA of vernacular housing type, and that has been very precious. So it is not a leftover cutout. It is where the most pristine activity happened: the cooking, the worship, the family, and even below the water harvesting cistern. And this is mass production to crafts tradition. So again, like thali, one kind of chef, so say carpenter makes some number of brackets, some number of columns, some number of windows, and you permute and combine, and each house becomes unique, different from another, and yet there is a parity, so that identity within conformity. So it's all been practiced. You can identify your house through a door, but doors have a similar kind of language. Multiple use of space: morning for chores, afternoon for play, evening for socializing, and festivities at the seasonal time. Even the lifestyle, that what fan does with electrical power, you could do with muscle power with a swing here. So that furniture system became an integral part, and even the spicier food you perspiring allows you to have a kind of very evaporative cooling through perspiration being evaporated. So those being principles, very quickly I run through selective example at different scales of a kind of sort of a product, or to installation, to whole settlement, with all these. So for example, refuse. This is Ujasio light and ventilation. We won the Habitat Design, United Nations Habitat Award this 2 years ago, where there was no light ventilation in a deep long house in a slum. Thousands of houses like that, and the last room was invariably pitch dark because three side it was sharing the wall with the neighbor. So this is where we said that this was one example way before the MIT and Philippines one, that how could a pet bottle become a glowing kind of a phenomenon, at least through the day. But this would not ventilate. So then we eventually, in several hundred houses, installed this called Ujasyu, which means light and ventilation. It's a kind of translucent cast by the kind of small group of people right there and put as a dormer over the roof. And as a result, you get actually, these are all pictures in daylight, and it has improved the quality of life of the people in terms of the education norm standard, because kids can work at home, the health, no stress of eye and gloominess, and most importantly, saving of electricity recorded over a year in all these houses, minimum of 250 a month, and recorded increase in their home-based economic income of 500 to 1500 a month. So that's a kind of contribution. So as I said, adding value for improving the quality of life. Reduce to reuse, or refuse to reuse. Refuse to build anything new, but do things within it. And what was refused was used here. Here it's reuse, recycling the building itself. This is Corbusier's building, and as you can see, dilapidated over time due to neglect. And that we restored and turned it into permanent museum on city of Ahmedabad. So the building which was desolate, and in India we have several of these resources which can be reused as a very positive kind of place. Then reduce. The first was refuse, here it's reduce. This is actually an IT office, and we have done fourth or fifth, I don't remember, extensions to that of hundreds of new seats added in different premises. This was a commercial premise we were given. Don't look at the fancy picture of light, which is only for photographs, but simple principles of daylight, principle of opening the window when temperature is valid, principle of nobody's in the shadow, so people sit perpendicular to the light and the view, and they have a manual control of kind of controlling the intensity of the sun. So we have these blinds of a kind. We have live plants inside to improve the quality of air, as well as when it grows further. These are very early pictures. It can become a kind of a curtain in itself, and nature inspired detailing, so you don't get bored sitting inside. And energy efficiency. So there's no denial to use today's technology or know-how. So that's why I'm saying that it's what is valid of today continues, and what came from yesterday, which is even the better part of us today, we should not be shy of using it in the name of so-called modernity. That's foolishness. Then redefine. So here, this is a residence for a wealthy person. This has been part of that 51 Beautiful Homes of India book and all that. But this one, our brief was that centrally air conditioned and this vitrified tile, and from there we have made them, convinced them, and they use it as selective air conditioning in few places and all natural palette of material. So that's how, we've used the principles of our own old time vernacular house forms and applied it here. For example, massing from north south. So a common sense principle of how much of overhang, how much of what kind of massing, the idea of water harvesting and recycling. In the courtyard, we have harvested roof water for even this rich family, microcause, kind of climate effect from natural palette of material, microclimate from water and vegetation. Here, what you see, there's no false ceiling. This up and down is all natural section. And like the above, the ceiling to accommodate fan, this is a formal drawing room. And you can see the courtyard on the next of it. And that courtyard is an underground tank. And above, where the ceiling is lifted, is actually a built-in bed. So this is how the same could be architecturally manipulated. And the courtyard allows for light ventilation, but no more monkey and the that skylight from outside that you saw gives you perpetual deflected light all through the day. Smoke directly ventilates out, as well as you have heat also escaping out. So this is for, I don't know, good knows, 10, 15 years without chimney, it's going on. Then light, the dynamics of light, it's ferrocement roof, but little sleet. So with setting sun, it invites you to, rising sun, it invites you to wake up. And double heighted area, as the sun moves, that puncture of the bird changes its shadow all along. Integration of craft as well as the present science and technology. So it works both ways. You give patronage to the artist as well as you don't shy off from the technological advancement and the positive advantage of that today. Respond. The whole architecture comes by the response to the direction. For example, you see these facades, they are pure facades of left-hand side, you can guess, is the north, which is a naturally ventilated shaft of circulation, and it is punctured jali in a contemporary sense of giving a crossword puzzle. The middle one is south with the reproduction of the jali from the monuments of Ahmedabad, and southwest, as I say, it needs to have the breeze, but you can't have the sun, and sun moves also through the day or through the season. So it's an operable lure from outside with a band of vegetation on upper floor. So this is how the whole thing responds to the direction that it faces, and that's how, and this is how internally it comes across. There are interactive games that you do with your detailing, etc. Recycle. This is a use of recycled waste material from urban, fabric. 2,600 metric ton of waste is produced in Ahmedabad alone every day, and that has been recycled. So this, here you can see, this has also been there for now good 14 years or so. So this is fly ash brick with 5% cement, waste residue brick. This was just 75 paisa compared to 3 rupee brick then. This is soil block with 5%. This is wooden crate. So wood is very expensive, but crate wood being brittle, it's only used for burning as a fuel wood. But if you kind of change the detailing, we don't nail the glass, do we? So we just put bidding. So likewise, we change the detailing and it has become a beautiful partition. Same way in Ahmedabad, even though it's a dry city, there are enough liquor bottles to be found, and we have used it on a western facade because, sun being low, no overhang would cut down this glare. So we have these kind of translucent glass and the stained glass bottles, which glow with the, instead of spirit, with the spirit of light, and becomes a beautiful kind of glowing wall with illumination passed on, but not the glare. And then we became little bolder, and in further work, even here on the top, it is a ventilating jali. It's a screen where you have the air gaps to kind of also allow for breeze. So again, its location and all that is a design feature, and it's also how would it work, where it would work. For example, nobody gives you 5 paisa for empty plastic bottle, and after party there are thousands of them thrown. So here the old widows of the settlement singing bhajans in the evening with a simple inert material we brought from the dumpfill site. They, with thumb pressure, filled up this bottle, and no paisa value has become 2.5 rupee brick in the wall, and they earned some livelihood by doing that. Same way, your I love you symbols of tetrahedral packs as well as Cadbury wrappers and all that. They're neither paper nor plastic. So they were shredded and put into FRP to become substitute for fiberglass, and they become paneling. The thin, illegally sold micron bags can be braided as plastic thread, and it becomes a thread with higher value. This is rag, and this is sold by meters now in the settlements. And where you make translucent panels, or even the oil-tin container opened up becomes a paneling, crate wood paneling. This is fiber, that is your textile reinforced panel. Even the digital waste, so that time CDs used to be available, and it became a paneling like this in the door. I'm looking to invent a thing so I can read all that data sitting there. So it would be an interactive door. These blades, they've been the GI sheet of practically coming from the oil-tin container, becomes the louver with a crate wood frame, ventilator, scrap door as an interactive door for a crash, so that kids could literally play it around. This was not a design that we need a cycle. The scrap had some parts of cycle, and we did accordingly. Same way, this is a waste from a construction site where you have to pay to offload this waste of irregular stones and wasted material like that. Here we use the same and did a little bit of local shaping, and it has become a very interactive floor, so to say. This filler slab idea with an inert material, with even digital one, with a clay pots. So it becomes a kind of interactive ceiling, and it saves on consumption of concrete, etc. by the logic of. So this is how this structure in the settlement is functioning for 15 plus years. And this is a crash. So it's a different all-day cycle. Two ayahs, two nannies from the settlement earn livelihood by looking after 17 kids in this one. The daytime it used as a school. Late afternoon, it's a vocational training in computer for these young ladies, so they get same employability like anybody else. And then festivity, it's a community center, like that. So reusing the waste and that. This one is reinterpreting where traditional principle, this is an institute. So idea of integrating built, and like we had courtyard. So here it's a multiple courtyard architecture. It's submerged in the kind of ground. The courtyard gets you shaded area. It has harvesting tank below, like Taka, 22 lakh liter from this premise is harvested. No drop of water goes out. Then land is a renewable resource. So before planting the first brick, we had a tree planted and they've grown up. So these are different orchards and whatnot. So they also vegetable and yields. Then from where the soil was dug, being an outskirt land, the roads came later, and therefore we were about 8 inches below the road. So we did not import or export soil. We dug up very, very calculatedly certain areas just by about 4 feet, like classroom and some of these, which got the natural insulation of the earth burning. And the soil that came out from there was parked right around the same site. So now we are 8 inches above the road. So 16 to 18 inch manipulation without import or export of even a fistful, soil. Then the whole idea of vertically projecting, no software was used, simple calculator to understand azimuth, solar azimuth and altitude, and commonsensically deriving that. And you can see the picture on the right one is a southwest facade. And that also can get shaded for a certain time of the day and most of the year, and therefore it doesn't warm up. And if you see the section, right hand side is a northeast, which is submerged as well as low, and left hand side is a southwest, so which rises. So there's mutual shading idea. Southwest is nighttime use, so it's good for ventilated breeze at the night, and the daytime it shelters. Ferrocement roof, but ferrocement thin roof can transmit a lot of heat. So it's been further insulated with vermiculite and China mosaic. And ferrocement saves cement and steel, and also without proper formwork. Just by support of these skeletal steel, you can do it. So overall saving even in loading, etc. Ventilated cavity, it's exposed brick, natural finish, but you have ventilated air inside, so the hot air escapes out through the cowl that you see from bottom right. And three-part window in a contemporary way, so air and illumination come in, but glare and haze is not allowed. This is how the courtyard wall itself, the classes which are submerged, the building that comes around, its foundation itself gave you, without any much extra cost, the dip cistern for harvesting rainwater. So roof water gets harvested. We have percolating wall to give it back to Mother Earth, as well as your recycled waste and things like that. Biogas and root zone is also how we treat the other waste from bathroom, etc. There is a battery-less kind of solar generation. This is almost 18 years ago, at least 15, 16 years ago, where they've been running the solar pump through that, solar to heating, cooking, etc. And barrier-free spaces, multiple use of the space over time. So they don't have big rooms, but they can use it for activities up to 5,000 people outdoors without having to be in the auditorium. Dr. Abdul Kalam ji opened it, and that time there were thousands of people gathered, etc. Reform. How do you kind of use the similar element and create something out of just transforming it? This is a memorial. I'm just changing the scale one to the other, one example of each typology. It's only and only created by 5 elements, the fire, water, etc. that you know. And this memorial is engaging. It is all about guiding you through the movement. So design the elements that they come in, the sound of water, the lead through water. This is herbal and kind of Ayurvedic plantation, because this was a memorial for a founder of a pharmacy. So we took that as a kind of inspiration, and we planted species that can help in that. They are all with information, the whole idea of cyclic time. So we have decoded dharma here. And the Padma Vibhushan artist from Odisha, Mr. Mohapatra, was engaged to do certain artwork. Some local craft people were involved. Some artists were involved. So patronage to these local art and craft. This is Bhagavad Gita inscription. So you take like a temple, a circumambulation. So it transits you mentally also. And there is light and water. So these water, fire, biounity, right from the center to beyond. And these, stone have been engraved manually, as well as combination of CNC. 87 Bhagavad Gita shloks are translated in 4 languages. This again, this Ayush Kasliwal, the designer, did these mudras, what he did in the Delhi airport, etc. So this has been a kind of a comprehensive place with, as you can see, no really built building per se. This is open amphitheater, and it's all kinds of different moods and kind of circumambulation. The only building was the museum building, and that also you can see it's a 40 feet tall, but it's been submerged below ground, and live grass grows over. So it is not even artificial, this thing. Then restore and regenerate or recreate. This is the settlement scale now, the larger and the last, where post-earthquake, there are 18 different settlements. I'm only showing you one as an approach. So this was the vernacular, and they built with mud. No bank gives you collateral loan on this. And look at this, even though it was out of mud, nothing has happened to the mud architecture from 67-year-old. It's been dated accordingly. And 3-year-old concrete, whatever adaptation they made, had all given way. Same place, same impact. Now you can say it was a fluke, the upper picture, but the lower picture is fluke 2, fluke 3, many flukes to be fluke, but the consistent has been here on the top picture. Right-hand side, there is a debris of what has fallen down. Left-hand side, the new construction on the bottom has fallen down. There are commonsensical reasons, because when you look from vernacular, over time they have perfected and they've understood the forces. So not that they were smarter, but they have gone through this, and therefore they have tried to overcome that. So I won't get into detail, but from its circular form to slenderness ratio to widened base to kind of small opening to stiffening of the gem to sort of conical roof. So we encourage them to do it in their way of life, We supported them with material and stuff like that. They knew how to mix clay with what straw. We gave them, we even created a site plan with a participatory process. Who is your neighbor? You want to be here or there, you know? And then construction also was a self-help. So here we can see that each one created their own set of units. Youngest of them learned from the oldest. So the generational know-how, traditional know-how has passed on. Like here, 12-year-old boy knows how to do this complicated roof. So coming two generation now are aware by practical doing lesson of these kind of house type. So it has at least gone through that far. And then the whole thing was done where they were involved, so they have sense of belonging. And this is how with the natural clay they kind of doll up their houses. Inside it's a kind of a white clay and mirror work, which is also representing their cultural ethos and its scientific design. Because of the extreme vagary of the weather outside, you don't need big opening. So that has been reduced, but you don't want a gloomy area either inside. So you have a white natural clay as well as the mirror work to maximize with reflection, whatever little opening that brings in the light. And then the amenities of the other kind were done. New intermediate technology was introduced and they very easily adapted. They did not have door-to-door sanitation. Now they have door-to-door sanitation, and overnight they adapted. Otherwise they had to go way out, and their women had a kind of problem of constipation and tummy problem, etc. Here, this smokeless stove, this decentralized way to get illumination, at least in one room, etc. Then from where the soil was dug very consciously, we found a patch right at the site. And that soil was used as a resource to make the block, but that created depression. Left-hand side is with government help we could do with the people's knowledge that here was a, kind of a check dam. So we created a proper check dam with GMDC's help. But here on the right, it was the simple block excavated pond, and that with clay strata kept water for a few months with just 3 inches of rainfall in the entire season in that desert where camels ply and no vegetation is seen. And at that, because of the water, at their own behest, they created this agriculture. So now even ecology has changed, and you can see the smiles on faces, how they celebrate festivities in the rain. And this is also, we had won the United Nations Habitat Award, and we were asked to do, I'm not saying it for award, but 10 years later, they said, what has been the lessons learned? And if there are kind of anything that has gone wrong or whatever, so you document again. So these are 10-year later pictures of these where on the contrary, they have improved rather than removed. And they have built new houses also like that. And you can see they've adapted to newer gadgets and yet maintain their tradition. So in short, glamour and beauty both catch our attention, but glamour being applied like a fashion, it catches attention, but it's temporal and fades away in no time. But I think architecture, we're looking for timeless beauty, which is integral and it is as fresh all the time. Let me conclude with this one of the passages between grandson and grandfather. Grandson asks grandpa, how old are you? And grandpa replies, son, I was born before television, penicillin, polio shots, frozen food, Xerox, contact lenses, frisbees, credit cards, laser beams, ballpoint pens, pantyhose, air conditioner, dishwasher, and men hadn't yet walked onto the moon. Your grandmother and I got married first and then lived together. Every family had a father and a mother. We were all before computer dating, dual careers, daycare centers, and group therapy. Our lives were governed by 10 commandments, good judgment, and common sense. Serving your country was privilege, and living in the country was even bigger pride. We thought fast food was what people ate during the fasting days like Lent. We never heard of FM radios, tape decks, CDs, electric typewriters, yogurts, or guys wearing earrings. We listened to the news and the president's speeches in our radios. Pizza Hut, McDonald's, and instant coffees were unheard of. In my day, Coke was a cold drink. Pot was something your mother cooked in. Rock music was grandmother's lullaby. Aides were helpers in principal's office. Cheap meant a piece of wood. Hardware was found in a hardware store. And software wasn't even a word. And we were the last generation to actually believe that lady needed a husband to have a baby. No wonder people call us old and confused and say there is a generation gap. And how old do you think I am? Now, if there are any young friends, students there, they might think that, oh, this is passé, very age-old, primordial kind of a society. But it's just 66 years ago, and nothing really as human race we are changed with. These are tools, gadget, or support systems that may have changed its name from radio to television and so on and so forth. Let us not fool ourselves that we are, as human race, any more transformed. We understood in COVID that living in a family, living in a neighborhood, depending on the sort of support of people around, actually did the job. The tool and technology can be of help as a tool, but let's not say hamara jamana badal gaya and the stuff like that. Even today, a son calls father on 60th birthday on Skype, and father would be very happy that I love this technology, and father, I could speak and see his face. But if son physically comes next day, early morning of the same birthday or late evening, whatever, the father would only hug and cry and say, son, you just came for me, you made my day, and even the death comes, I don't care. So there are certain things which has not changed, because as I say, eventually it goes down to human and human to nature kind of a bond. And if we base our development model on those two realities, then I don't think it would ever go wrong or it would fail. Look at this century old, who is caged and who is tied. One technology brought family together on a dining table. Other technology, even on the same table, has isolated people in their own space on the same time. We had surfing, CCTV, and WhatsApp of a different kind. 100 years later, newspaper has changed. Same newspaper, printed one comes in your laptop. So we need to understand what has changed and what has remained the same. So just to end with this slogan, that we can and do empower through design, being that forte as our profession, but we must have the bottom line that we should evolve or add value to improve the quality of life. So empower through design to improve the quality of life. And for that, rather than giving Gandhian currency the value, we need to make Gandhian value as the currency, and we can change that. In India, we are in a lucky position that we have this traditional wisdom right in our backyard, accumulated wisdom of 6,500 years, where therefore, if we can inspire from yesterday and yet aspire for tomorrow, we don't have to reinvent the wheel as ABCD all over again. We can pick up from Q, R, or S and take our alphabets further. So welcome to in the rejuvenated planet to traverse in the immensity of time and space in the reality of between the notion and reality. Thank you for your patient listening. And if you have any questions, thank you, IIA, for giving this platform to share the views.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful chat. It was thought-provoking, inspiring, and very refreshing. It aptly reinforces all the more on the socio-cultural appropriateness and timeless aesthetics. I feel personally many takeaways and home messages for one's lifetime. Thank you again, Yatinji.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you.
It's been such a wonderful presentation, and I could have some few questions for you if you don't mind taking it.
No, I'll be happy. I have no limit of time. You might have technical limit of time. So you please be the boss and tell me. Shoot.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. The first question I would have for you is, how do you change hats seamlessly between being an author, academician, researcher, as well as a practicing architect? There are a lot of hats that you change.
So best thing is don't wear a hat. I don't even have a hair. So be a bald person, and therefore you don't have to pretend to be doing this or that. Be yourself, and it all comes naturally. I think if you are thinking about something, you just put it in one format, it becomes a book. And if in order to think and go to the depth of things, you must be able to research. This is what even doctors have to do, no? So that they have to kind of dig deep about certain diseases, and then only they can rightly diagnose something. They have to be kept updated about things. So the point is that to me, this has come all together. I don't even know. Sometimes I get very embarrassed when I hear these titles coming through. But just now in this COVID time, we were working from home, and I'm not boasting, but I was very happy. I really found freedom. I saw that it has nothing to do with 24 hours as a limit, but it has to do with watch. That earlier somebody was watching the watch. that you had to be ready at 9 and you had to do this and you had to do at 10:30. Here, you could work for 12 hours, but if you want to see movie in between, you could do that and, again come back to this. So I could finish 3 of my books in addition. So this world would be burdened with some titles very soon. But so it was very natural that you could do. So I was able to watch film every day, a new film on Netflix. We were there. We were staying in a extended family, so we enjoyed. I did dishes. And we kind of debated on the dinner for lunch, over lunch, and over lunch, over dinner, the lunch, and likewise, food is important part of life, and likewise. So what I mean is that as human being, if we be ourselves, I think these things come naturally. So I don't think you have to make real effort on this. You have to believe in what you're doing, and I'm only sharing. I don't know what I'm putting across. Everybody has to agree, but it's just a medium. And I find that certain tools help. Like for example, the book has its own reach and its own, kind of impact to be able to share. I used to write article in a newspaper 3 years in a row. I wrote weekly column, and it could reach out to even bureaucrats and whatnot. And a lot of them acknowledged about certain ideas and whatnot. So that encourages you to keep going. So, and most importantly, it's like thali, that you get bored doing one thing all the time. So simply for the boredom, you do different things, and that keeps you going. I always say that next day morning 9 o'clock, if you look forward to when you sleep, you are alive and you are happy, because otherwise you are dead. If you think, oh my God, Monday morning 9 o'clock, you are dead.
Okay, very good. That brings me to another question. When I was researching who architect Yatin Pandya is, there is a key word that keeps coming again and again, which is called the activist. So, should an architect need to be an activist in society today? That's my question.
No, it's like I'm not being Gandhi at all, but I'm just using that phrase that you live by demonstration. So activism is nothing. And in fact, I also believe in, I'm not being religious, but I also believe in Krishna. Not always you be Ram, but even Krishna, what he said was important. So sometime with books, you play Krishna. Sometime with your kid, you become Ram or whatever like that. So the point is that activism is a big word. But the thing is that as professional, I think it goes hand in hand. All of us ought to be an activist in the sense that we are not there to satisfy individual clients' fancy. We have to satisfy his needs. We have to evaluate the public good, because as professional, that's a difference between businessman and a professional. If I say very falsely that ballpoint I am carrying was King Akbar's and somebody wants to pay me $100, maybe it's a bad kind of way of doing business, but it's okay. But as professional, I cannot say that yours is a low-cost housing and you won't get any ventilation in a house. Or if client comes and say that, you have to build my house in a way that a boy from an opposite apartment ran away with my girl. So I want an entire facade in a concave glass and his curtain should burn. I don't think you would satisfy that need, because you would see that as professional, you have to seek collective good. Like even a court of law accepts doctor's certificate that his eyesight is poor and he cannot see from that distance. So he has not to take a bribe and falsify statement. That is where society trusts him. So same way as architect, we have to know we are doing for the collective good of the society. So even though we are doing for individual client, society trusts us that by doing that, we would not harm the collective good of the rest of the society. So that's why that activism part is nothing but to see that where things are right or wrong, and something that you voice out through one medium, something you do it by demonstration. For example, this Manav Sadhana, recycled waste center, if that center was not actually built, we had 3 years of very, very intense research. There are this thick 9 volumes of different kinds of research. We went to 500 homes in different 250 slum houses in different cities. We actually measured the waste coming out from every house of a different economic strata and a different type of housing type, from high rise to traditional housing, etc., to do that research. But eventually that research translated, if not translated into real building, People would say, oh, this is idealistic, this is this, but there are practical problems. We set a benchmark that it should be aesthetically better, it should be performing better than the alternatives the slum guys would have, but it should be within the economic framework. So if people use certain things in another way, same cost, what we put should be provided. So if client's limit is not to exceed the cost, how do you manage there? So this is where you come in play to innovate, to kind of question, as well as to sort of find some avenues. So activism is more a figure of speech to say that you have to be, kind of alive and vocal, not by words, but vocal in sense of, and what you do has to be an actual demonstration of what you think and what you preach.
I have one more question before we move to the chat box. My question is, since you mentioned client and sustainability, my question is, how would you convince a commercially excessively inclined client to embrace sustainability or frugality?
See, there are always choices you have. It's, for example, Amitabh Bachchan, I'm not comparing myself, I'm just using him as a, even he would choose what script to take or not take. Okay, so there are always choices you have, from refuse to kind of transform and convince. Like I said, that rich person gave me a brief that, look, I'm at my fag end of my life. Thank God he's alive still, very happy, kicking. But he said that I've lived in many ways and now I want fully air conditioned house and I want a synthetic flooring so that I can, even him, we did all design, but I convinced meaning I said, do you have any problem if you get the comfort by natural means? You can, I'm nobody to tell that you open the AC or not. And trust me, during the course of construction, we went and saw certain alternative material like vitrified tile and all that, by his choice. But before it was laid, he came back and said, Yatin, I think you're right, and I want to go with this. So today, it is selectively air-conditioned building. They use the outdoor spaces most. I said that it's not air conditioning I'm after, but you have a 2,000 square yard plot, and if you build just central air-conditioned house, I'm worried that you would not even step into the garden. So that's why. And now I have also stayed overnight, their friends and all, and morning coffee they take there, to son and father chat over there in the late evening, to guests they entertain there in the courtyard given in the southwest the semi-covered veranda with a deep overhang given there. So what I mean is that that's another way to educate without affecting their performance. Like I said, client, you think this client had said that use this recycle waste and bottle in the country? They resisted vehemently to say, don't make us guinea pig, and one, American return, trustee, young engineer, was against this idea, saying that we are Gandhian and we are using the liquor bottle. It should not be part of our premise, And trust me, the counter argument, one real Gandhian elderly gentleman, another trustee, 75-year-old, gave to him in the same meeting was that we are doing Gandhi's work. We are burying this bottle from coming into the market again, So what I mean is that there are ways to convey the actual benefits. And yet, when you satisfy, what does client want? He wants performance. What does client want? Economics, or not to kind of flout on that. And of course, good aesthetics. So when you give him these three bottom lines, then you have a play field within which you can play. This was and lastly, some places, some of these projects was not charged by fees. And there you get that extra kind of lever arm to say that, look, I would only do if I have something to play with. So you get that, So like the very first phase we did, there was this resistance. More than client, it was the contractor, because he had to do things different ways, And after that, the client itself agreed to. We did 4 different kinds of palette of waste in a subsequent extensions, like that. So that's like that interior that I showed for an IT office. We have done the 4 extensions with 300 people in each extension. They've done well for themselves, and each time these concepts they've taken, So on the contrary, they themselves told me that the electricity has halved after the renovation, And in the commercial building, I couldn't do anything from outside. So all I did was from inside. And there's just a common sense principles that have been applied there.
Thank you. Senthil sir, would you like to have any questions for FNG
Uh,
before we go to the chat box questions?
Yatin ji, how long will you be working? Your office staff be working on Saturdays? Now it's 5:30. They are working.
Oh, I hope they are not listening because even tomorrow we might work. No. I hope now they can hear very loudly. No, as principals, we do work 5 days a week, but we have some things which goes on for 365 days emergency, so they end up working. No, but we don't take any attendances. We don't cut salary leaves, anything on their own initiative. So we are a small group, and I'm thankful to them that on their own initiative, I refuse to take any attendance, even in classes where I teach. You come to do this, and they believe that they are coming here as a part of the team. There's no, they can hear right now if the client scolds me, they can see that I'm napping or whatever, or so we don't have that barrier. And all are architect or trainees, so we don't have any draftsman, engineer, or that we network with. So why? Because there could be a dialogue. So I say every line drawn is a design. So it's a kind of same language understanding. We make physical models. We use computers, as you see, but we make physical models even today. And of course, for client, we might have renderings, digital, etc. But that's not the design tool. That's a communication tool. So like just recently, last Sunday, we had a big presentation and 18 models we had made post lockdown, because during lockdown we could work from home, but post lockdown we had few people from local area we could come, and within a week we could make 18 models to show it to, and client and eventually only saw it through Zoom. So it's just what you believe in, and how we
We
Excellent.
have
Actually,
our the IIA Joint Secretary,
Yeah.
Architect C.R. Raju with us, basically.
Oh,
Raju sir,
I've
you're
met him
around.
before. Vanakkam,
Architect
Raju
Raju sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hello.
Sir,
Yes,
video
sir.
on பண்ணுங்க sir.
You have a better face than mine, so we would like to see yours. How
Good
are you?
evening, Yatin ji. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
I
Thanks
still
for.
remember your hospitality when we came to Gujarat.
Oh, pleasure. There's hardly anything.
In fact, I was through this lecture of yours. I think I really experienced a very beautiful feeling when I was hearing you
Oh,
speak about,
thank you.
the roots are more important for all of us, and the basics.
Yeah.
I think we should always keep in mind when we pursue our profession. I think that is a very good message for all our architects in Tamil Nadu.
Thank
See,
you.
as we come along, I think somehow we try to deviate from those basic principles and traits, and try to go into a lot of commercial, things and aspects like that, which ultimately lead us to what we are today. So it is a nice time that you spoke about, the back to basics and the natural traits every architect or every professional should have in, pursuing the profession, and that will come, naturally with experience. And I think your experience and your views have really enthused all of us. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to meeting you soon, and having an excellent interaction with you at some
Thank
point
you.
of time.
Thank you.
Thank you
Sure.
very much for the
No, you're well summarized. When often, we are asked that we all as professional come across that it's like a film. Does film have to brand as commercial or art? There were many films which became successful both ways. And I think those are the model we need to learn, like starting from 80s Govind Nilani or Satyaji, Shyam Benegal's, that Ardha Satya and whatnot. It was an art film, parallel cinema, and yet it was very, commercially also successful. So I don't think, we need to make that division. Like, right now, the point is undue liberties and licenses. Like very well you said that we have lost that path and bottom lines, principles. For example, IT office, I'm not blaming IT, but even this departmental stores. Now, very huge footprint, but without any punctures in between. Now we all know that natural light can only penetrate through 3 meters or so. And for advertisement of the mannequins and all, they will not even have external windows, even though it is facing a very busy road, you know. Now, instead, the same architecture, like in Ahmedabad, we used to have 4 feet balcony as free of FAR. So we as architect invented a sawtooth kind of a plan. So you make jagged edges, and all that edges 4 feet when you add, you were able to almost get 3 FSI out of 1, which was 1.2, which was legally available. Now for that, we could use our imagination and innovation. But the default was that because of that, no place was away from 3 meter or 4 meter from the window. So even though it was a bigger building, you had sawtooth to bring you light, nature, ventilation in. So why do we not, think of that? Who gave us a license to have a dark corridor without light and ventilation? Who gave us a license? Even when I was a student would fail if there was no ventilation to toilet. There were experts in the jury who always looked at toilet ventilation. Some looked at the kind of corridors and cross ventilation and natural light. So I'm not saying don't use light at night, but daytime where outside we need to wear Ray-Ban glasses, goggles. Why do we have to have light in the corridor like that? And we can easily invent some way to bring in light and diffuse light,
Yeah, our own tradition and history is full of examples
Yes,
of sustainability and green elements. Today,
absolutely.
green is something different people describe,
Yeah,
but we have always been, friendly and sustainable.
that's right.
And all the projects which you presented, I think you are following those principles, and we are very proud of that. And I think it's inspiration for all architects who are, youngsters who are coming up, to rely upon our age-old materials and systems and traditions and incorporate them in our design and thought process.
No,
Thank
I
you very
must,
much.
I must make confession, which I always do, but don't think I say the same thing in, Gurugram in North. But Senthil Kumar would vouch for it. When I come to South, like I was in Trichy often earlier to give workshops and whatnot, actually my conviction becomes stronger because there you leave all these principles in Gurugram, and because we think Delhi, India as New Mumbai, India as this high-rise skyscraper only. In Mumbai, even Mumbai has Buleshwar, even Mumbai has low-rise Bandra neighborhoods, but we don't look at that. They are also Bombayite. Shah Rukh Khan also lives in such kind of things, and it's fairly dense. There are shrines all over, and it's a kind of a neighborhood, low-rise, high density, even in a as mega city as that. So unfortunately, we only think India lives by certain stupid examples of North, but actually we feel convinced when we come to South that Mr. Iyer or Nair might be in a multinational 9 to 6 in his Tamil accent, might be in a multinational talking to the world. But 6 to 9, he comes back, and I saw in Trichy that he would wait for the arti of the temple, and his wife would be doing a rice-paste rangoli outside, which is a public right-of-way. Rickshaw can go by there. And then after the arti, he wears his mund, he eats his rice and watches Rajnikant movie. So where is the contradiction, in that?
Yatinji, can we move on to the other question?
Please.
Senthil sir, do you have any questions before we move to the chat box question?
Not questions. I would like to say your presentation was like an award-winning movie, sir. Where there are no heroes, no heroines, no songs, no foreign locations where the scene. I think the hero and heroines are the locally available materials, and the music is your sunlight, your wind, and and the director is you. The credit will go to the director only, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You've been a good art critic.
Sir, we have a question from our
Please,
chat box.
please.
This is from architect Prasanna Pandya. And the question goes like this. The question is conventional architecture and modern architectural material a constraint to follow the traditional ideas? Can you give us the success and failure examples to understand how we can expand our boundaries in achieving the timelessness.
Okay. I believe there are two or three hidden ones here. Timelessness does not come by the material. Timelessness comes by the nature or the potential of engagement, that not only today, even tomorrow I do that, I'm engaged equally. So it comes fresh all the time that I see it. Even concrete can give you that freshness. So can be the the stone one. For example, if both the material are bathing in sun, if both the material can express their texture differently as the sun moves, they are looking different at different times. So timelessness has to do with the way you organize the space, way these elements come across, and the way they interact. So I mean, a very quick thumb rule is that integrate built with nature, and you have timelessness, because building would be always static, it would be predictable. But nature is constantly changing. It's inherent in nature to change. For example, we used to have courtyard, and courtyard brought in different light through the day. We have window to look out, and 70 channels in a TV, we get bored switching channels, and looking out of a window, it's fairly kind of exciting to keep engaged there. Looking at the street, grandparents can come out onto the street and spend the whole day by the spontaneity of the way people move and whatever happens. Everyday drama doesn't happen, but it's a kind of natural routine as a drama that happens there, which does not come in as spontaneously in a television. So I would say that's timelessness has to do with how it engages you every time. And that's why some of those principles I said, that you make it like a personal discovery. Any food which is a combination food, then you're not you can make your own taste every day. Like tomorrow, same thali, but if I'm from Scandinavia, or I'm today bored and I want to have a little sweeter palate, I can change my combination. I can have more rice and less pickle, and it would be blend. I could reverse it, and I could do that. First bite is blend, second bite is very spicy. That's why you have idli, which is as blend as it can ever be. And at the same time, chutney can be spicy, it can be salty, rasam can be spicy, liquid versus solid, crunchy versus glossy, sweet versus sour. So it has multiple infinite combination, and this is what nature brings in. Nature has light, nature has wind, nature has vegetation, because tree decomposes, there is bird coming, it blooms. And that's why even in our project, we try to plant trees which are seasonally blooming. So you appreciate the bloom of summer versus winter, bloom both by flower as well as fruiting. I've always wondered why cities plantation is not a fruiting tree. You could have, even if anybody throws stone and takes away, at least somebody gets it. But if I grow cactus, nobody gets it, like that. So you could enjoy the mango in the summer, or you could enjoy another fruit in monsoon, and likewise, So point is that by nature, nature is changing, and when architecture interacts with nature, then it's timeless. So that is one part. Now coming to material part, conventional, modern, there's no such division. It's how you treat it is where you might recollect it by time. Stone is a stone is a stone. Even the Paleolithic age, somebody scooped out the cave and created stone architecture. Then the dressed one, and then even now the mirror polished slabs. So stone has not changed. How you treat it, because of those tools and technology, we might say, might represent this time. That's an association that is not again inherent to material. So point is that if you understand the parameter, it's like, do you think doctor need to be kind of mugging up the medicine? No. And that's why generic medicine has come in. You don't have to know it by the brand, but as generic medicine prescriber, you have to know, I want a light tone flooring. I want it glossy near the window so that light can, shimmer and shine, and it can feel endless. I want a grip, so there must be a little texture, and I want to create a visual focus, so I might have an inlay in the middle. Okay, and if this happens to be a puja room, I might have a mandala or whatever as a inlay. So what I mean is that it is all these parameters that decide it. It is not you knowing so and so company and new product. They only toe your line. So you prescribe first. Same way the strength of the material. For example, we have Yemen 15-story skyscrapers in mud. And we think that when we think of mud by association, that it is the weakest. I'm not advocating mud. What I'm saying is the association. If I say mud, oh, weak material. But the same mud, clay, if you bake it, it not only hardens, but it is not water soluble. We drink tea, coffee, water out of that. So it is how you transform that for what performance. As against we are making happy sand castles on the beach. So every time, with water and whatever sun, it will dissolve. So mental mindset is that earth being weak, as against the tallest building, if it is Alburs or if the new one is going to come, it casts all its weight on earth. So how on earth can earth be a weak material? Okay, but if you know that earth is good in compression, you apply it accordingly. So Hassan Fatih learned that and understood that, and he created wonderful architecture using that material within its own property. You don't subject it to tension. So he used this, kind of what is that word called? It'll come back again. But that kind of a vault and created without even a form a beautiful architecture. As against, if we think concrete, and we would think, oh, strong material. But if concrete without steel is the weakest material, that's why we have to reinforce it with steel. If you did not have this 2 feet ugly beam, it would not span and stay. So that we think is a strong material. Okay, so it's just the mindset. The point is not to fight about, for example, I always, as a figure of speech, we say steel and glass. But glass in a south facade without protection is a problem. But glass in an interior between two cabins to translate the illumination going through and not to isolate two people from looking at each other. So it is very kind of friendly and it must be used. So it is not about swearing in of not ever use this material. Like in Kutch post-earthquake, we did 18 villages rehabilitation. I only showed you just one as an approach, But I was as much proud, and it was my decision to use in that the earth block as they made it and used it. All other ones are not bunga. They are other kind of design. In one, there was a hillock around and the stone was very cheaply available and they knew how to do in stone. And those houses were made in stone in the same district, but it's a white district. So there are variations to that. Same district in one village, I remember there was no resources and we had to get material from somewhere. So we got ready-made concrete hollow blocks. And I'm as much proud and satisfied about that choice, because no water, no nothing, it would have been a burden to do something else there. Okay, so it is not taking a vow. As I say, it's exactly like being a doctor where you treat a patient on its own merit. You don't say it's a rich patient I treat with modern and it's a poor patient and I treat with this. Even a most rich patient, Mukesh Ambani, should also be not subjected to CAT scan unless your clinical, test you can't make out. You must first see the pulse, use stethoscope, see his breath, and say, you're not suffering from cold, don't worry about COVID, please go home. You're into depression by getting a lot of these tie-ups, or enjoy your life with the family and you'll be cured. So sometimes it's a placebo effect. So what I mean is that kind of, so it's not branding, this material is new and contemporary, this material is old. Corbusier showed that you need the habitation, it's very geometric application of concrete. And, many other places, Roshan likewise, it's a very plastic application. To me, that's a good application of concrete because like clay, concrete is a very plastic material. As you mold, it would shape. And if I use it like a plain wall, then what is wrong in a brick? Same way, in traditional time, brick squinches. This, Muslim domes on a mosque, they could cover in a compressive force by corbelling each layer subsequently coming in. And that created beautiful internal profile. The squinches gave a three-dimensional kind of a form inside. So that was also a material, but learning and understanding what its characteristics was, and yet what performance we wanted out of it. Okay, like step well, that pictures I showed you, step well may be wide, but lift, to be able to lift the column and to place it in a place, so you must have not more than 12 to 14 feet, so you have intermediate column, and thanks to that column and beam you get beautiful frames, and it even adds to the architecture of it. Without those frames, if it was just the step, it would not be a same architecture, which you can very well experience in pattern, where upper 3 floors it's all broken down and it's only step, step, step. But when you come to the portals, that's where you feel, aha, there's architecture, there's a feeling about this space. Okay.
Yatinji, we almost ran out of time.
Exactly.
Time is never enough. So we have many more questions, but due to the paucity of time, we will collect them and send it to you. And whenever you have time, kindly respond to that, please.
Definitely.
And we conclude this session, and I request Architect Loganathan, Joint Honorary Secretary of IIA chapter, to take over, please. Logan, you will have to unmute, please.
Yatinji, thank you for the wonderful tally of so many variants, and from where we are at liberty to pick up so many things and mix up and have. And as our chairman rightly said, we are also very much overwhelmed to talk to a award-winning director who shoots all his movies not in the foreign location, and it's more traditional. Actually, we find every time, when we get into your presentation, there's a wonderful feeling about the traditional values and those kind of things, like. And the way you are asking us to identify the problem and give solutions that are multiple usage kind of thing, that is another learning from every time we have it. Thanks for introducing the new R value in buildings, the reuse and refuse and regenerate and so on and so forth. That was a intriguing feel that you gave with all examples, and particularly that particular non-centralized air-conditioned house that you showed. That was highly inspiring. So we thank you so much from the bottom of the heart for being with us in Tamil Nadu with the IIA Tamil Nadu chapter, with all the your such information. And thanks, sir.
No, thank you for giving me this platform, and with all your faces, I feel I'm in Tamil Nadu, except that I don't get those dosais and the coffee. So some other time we'll catch up on that.
Next time we will give you a dress code also with the mundu and all that. So
yeah, last time it was Coimbatore. I think we got wonderful sari as with our names inscribed. No, thank you. I have wonderful memories from the south, and I thank all the participants for patiently going through this grind, and thanks for this platform. Thanks a lot, and all the best. Keep safe.
We from IIA Tamil Nadu chapter, we thank all the participants who have actually taken time to come and be with us. We thank our chairman, Architect Sendil Kumar, for getting this whole thing. Our particularly Architect Durganand, who has been initiating this particular thing, being a bridge between you and us, and Architect Murali for also initiating this program. I thank our moderator Kosal Raman for helping us in this, and bottom of the heart, I thank Architect Yuvraj. Yuvraj has been a wonderful technical coordinator. He just does all these things in no time, actually.
Yes.
So he does this
so
like a magic.
He's wearing more hats.
This is a kind of a trademark he is trying to display. And so that's the thing. And we thank all the people who are involved in this. Our Anthony Morais, who has actually designed that wonderful, nice, peppy invite. And thanks all the participants for being here and spending time with us. Thanks one and all.
Thank you. All the best. Keep safe and stay positive.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for coming over. And stay connected, stay safe, stay healthy. We from IIA Tamil Nadu chapter, we shall be coming up with few more webinars. Stay connected with us. Thank you.
Stay positive. Thank you. Bye.